So it's finally the end of 2021, and I must say it's been a rocky year for a lot of photographers, but the camera industry is booming. Sony, Canon and Nikon have constantly released all throughout the year brand new lenses and cameras. So today we're going to go through all the specs, leaks and rumours surrounding Canon to really work out what you can expect from Canon in 2022. And I'm going to start right now. So before we go ahead and look into the future, let's look back at what Canon have released this year. Well, actually, Canon have had a spectacular year, releasing 7 brand new RF lenses, as well as 1 brand new mirrorless camera. So they started off this year creating the 14 to 35mm f4. Now this is a more budget orientated lens versus the Canon 15 to 35mm f2.8. So it's nice to see Canon filling in a few of the holes that are currently missing on the Canon EOS lineup. Now what I mean by that is there's a lot of very expensive lenses and there's not a lot of budget options out there. So this lens definitely fills the hole for the ultra wide angle zoom lens. And in the summertime, they released the Canon 100mm macro. Now, I loved the older EF macro version. I thought it was an amazing lens and I still have it in my camera bag, but it's nice to see a new RF version. So I'm going to be upgrading to that very soon because I really like macro lenses. And then in the autumn time, they released the 16mm and 100 to 400mm. Now, I've only recently reviewed the 16mm f2.8, so go ahead and click this video if you're interested in actually buying that lens, because it is a really good budget option if you're looking at an ultra wide angle prime lens. I thought it was really good, and it's nice to see Canon finally releasing more budget option lenses when you compare it to the rest of their lineup, which are sometimes very expensive. And at the same time, they released the 400mm and 600mm f4. Now obviously these are very expensive lenses, but there weren't any options out there currently for their RF cameras. So it's nice to see Canon again filling in a few of the holes that they were missing from their current camera lens lineup. And they also released a dual fisheye lens, the 5.2mm dual fisheye for their Canon EOS R5. Now this is a virtual reality lens, so it's really interesting to see where Canon actually take this, if they'll be creating any virtual reality technology or cameras in the future. And of course, what everybody was talking about was the Canon EOS R3, Canon's new mirrorless camera. Now, this isn't necessarily going to be the flagship. Canon has specifically said it fits between the Canon EOS 1DX Mark III and the Canon EOS R5. So it'll be interesting to see if they'll be releasing maybe a Canon R1X. But at the moment, this is the flagship mirrorless camera, and I must say it is absolutely spectacular. And a review for that camera will be coming out very soon on my channel. So enough about the past, let's talk about the future. And firstly, let's talk about lenses. Now currently there are quite a few holes in their RF lens lineup. Don't forget, Canon have been creating EF lenses since pretty much the 1980s. So they've got a lot of catch up to do if they want to replicate a lot of their EF lenses on their new RF system. So the first lens I think they're going to be creating is the Canon RF 10 to 24mm f4. Now the previous 10 to 24mm was an amazing lens. It was really popular for astrophotographers as well as landscape photographers. But again, it's an EF lens. So I think they're going to be converting this lens into the RF body, as well as maybe adapting a few of the optics so it performs better on new mirrorless cameras. I also think they're going to be creating a kind of new RF kit lens. Currently the kit lens that exists is the 24 to 105mm f4.5 to 7.1. Now this is a great lens, but it does have quite a few optical problems. It's also quite expensive. So I think they're going to be creating basically a budget orientated kit lens for their new mirrorless cameras that currently don't exist, but we will talk about those in a bit. I think they're going to be releasing an 18 to 45mm f4 to 5.6. Now this is going to be a very cheap lens, and it's going to be designed basically to fit on very cheap RF APS-C and full frame bodies. So it'll be interesting to see if they release this maybe as a kit with a possible new camera in 2022. I also think they're going to be releasing a whole bunch of new prime lenses. I think they're releasing a 35mm f1.2, as well as a possible 50mm f1.4 and a 135mm f1.4. Basically, all of these lenses currently exist in the EF lineup, but they don't exist in the RF lineup. So So I think they're going to take a lot of the designs from the EF body, but basically update the optical formula so they actually perform better on mirrorless cameras. Maybe make the autofocus a bit better, or maybe make the aperture a bit brighter. These things will really aid a lot of the photographers that are currently missing. That's why a lot of the adapters are so much out of stock, because people are buying the new RF bodies because they're really, really good, but they just don't have a large selection of lenses currently. So I think Canon are basically just going to be doing catch up. They're going to try and create as many lenses as possible to fill in all the gaps that are currently missing on the new RF bodies. And lastly, talking about lenses, I think they're basically just going to update the 500mm f4 into the RF body. They've already done the 400mm and they've already done the 600mm, so it would make sense if Canon actually create a 500mm f4, not necessarily a redesign, but basically just create it so it fits natively onto RF cameras. So now let's talk about the new cameras that I think are going to be out in 2022. So to kick it all off, and a camera that I actually expected to come out last year, is the Canon EOS R7. Now this is a camera that's going to be a revolutionary design for Canon. Currently, all of the Canon RF cameras are full frame. So I think this is going to be the very first APS-C camera that's actually going to change the game for a lot of wildlife, but also event photographers. I also think it's going to be a lot cheaper as well, between £1,500 to £2,000. The problem with a lot of the mirrorless cameras that Canon make at the moment is they are very expensive. The cheapest second generation mirrorless is £2,500. That's the Canon EOS R6. So I think they're going to release maybe more budget orientated cameras like the Canon EOS R7, again, to fill in those gaps. Canon actually created a Canon 7D back all the way in 2008. So it would make sense to actually this number to be called a Canon EOS R7, and I think it will be one of the best APS-C cameras on the market. I also think, and I really hope, they release a second generation Canon EOS RP. Now I loved this camera, I thought it was perfect. A cheap full frame camera to get people into the Canon ecosystem, great idea. The problem is the marketing was really poor and no one ended up really actually buying this camera. Also, other cameras like the Sonys and Nikons were outperforming them at the time. So I think it's time for a redesign and a rethink of the Canon EOS RP, possibly called the RP Mark II. Probably won't be called that because it's a bit of a silly name. It might be called like the R10 or something like that. But I think this is a really good design camera, and I think it has a lot of potential for a lot of amateur and beginner photographers out there. Think a camera maybe based around £800 to £1,000, full frame, that will be able to capture maybe 26 megapixels. Something like that would be revolutionary and great for, again, a lot of amateur and beginner photographers. So something I really hope is a Canon EOS RP Mark II, or possibly called the Canon EOS R10. Only time will decide. And maybe at the end of 2022, we might see Canon's flagship camera. It's not something I expect in 2022, maybe 23 or 24, just simply because they've only just released the Canon EOS R3. They don't want to necessarily already make it redundant in 2022. But if we are actually expecting it, it will definitely be to the later part of next year. And this will be the Canon EOS R1X. Basically replicating what the Canon 1DX Mark III stands for, but in a mirrorless body. This is an incredibly popular camera for so many reasons. Great battery life, amazing autofocus, but predominantly it's all about the build quality and the weather sealing. So it'll be nice to see if Canon actually create a new flagship camera, because they've specifically said the R3 is not a flagship camera. So are they going to release it in 2022? I don't think so, but again, only time will decide. So as you can see, I think Canon are going to have a very busy year in 2022. Again, several years ago, I didn't think any of this would happen. They were the sleeper of the bunch when it comes to Fuji, Sony, Nikon, and Canon. So I think Canon have actually changed the game when it comes to mirrorless technology. Again, Sony were doing really well and dominating the market, but now everyone that comes into my photography shop are either wanting to buy Canon or Sony. So they have become one of the top dogs when it comes to mirrorless cameras. So it'll be really nice to see them kind of continue this momentum into 2022. And let me guys know if you think any of these predictions are going to be correct, or are you looking forward to currently the Canon EOS R7? It's something that I really want to see in 2022. So let me know in the comments down below. Again guys, if you want to like, comment and subscribe to my channel, it really, really does help my channel grow. Also guys, if you want to hit the bell notification so you guys don't miss any of my latest content. And make sure to subscribe in 2022. I'm going to be predominantly focusing on lens reviews, Photoshop tutorials and Lightroom tutorials. So if you're interested in anything like that, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification. But until next time guys, keep creating.